Alrighty, I am ready to get this thing done. Let's get her done. Let's get her done. Just waiting for someone to join me here, and then I'll get started up. All right. Looks like I've got one person on here. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and do my explanation on the Stephen King universe and which books of his to read with the Dark Tower series in order to have the more rich experience, if you will. The Dark Tower series by Stephen King is a subject that is very near and dear to my heart, my friends. There are many other Stephen King short stories and novellas and whole novels that play into this thing. And it's a unique epic fantasy series in that way. And many people enjoy bringing in other books to read along with the series for the best experience. And when I think of these other books, I think of my big three tower connectors. By the way, friends, check out my shirt here. It is Roland the Gunslinger on my shirt. I think of my big three Dark Tower connections, and the first one I'm bringing into this reading recommendation is Black House by Stephen King and Peter Straub. This is the second book in a trilogy, and it's all about the Crimson King and the Dark Tower. In this one, the Crimson King, who is the antagonist, I better back up and explain what this thing is all about in a spoiler-free manner. The Dark Tower series is about a gunslinger named Roland, who is the last gunslinger of Gilead, and he's questing for the Dark Tower. Now, he doesn't know why he's after it, doesn't even really know what it is, but he does know that he's obsessed with the tower and that he will do anything to get there. On the other side, we have the Crimson King, who is also after the tower for his own reasons. Now, the Crimson King is trying to destroy the beams that hold up the tower. That's no spoiler, my friends. So that's what we have going on here. It's a battle for the tower between the gunslinger and the Crimson King. And Black House is all about the Crimson King. And it's all about the Crimson King trying to get a young boy, a psychic, to help him break the beams of the tower. And it's about a gunslinger named Jack Sawyer who's trying to stop him. So you see how Black House is all about the tower. The next book that I'm bringing into this is Insomnia, which is about a character named Patrick, who is a very crucial player in the Dark Tower series, and the entire book is Dark Tower. The third piece of my big three is Hearts in Atlantis. Now, this is a compilation of short stories that is a couple of novellas and some shorts. The first of which is the novella Low Men in Yellow Coats. Low Men in Yellow Coats is about a man named Ted Brodigan who is in the Dark Tower series. This is no spoiler, my friends. At some point in the Dark Tower series, Ted Brodigan just takes a break. He steps away for a while. And Low Men in Yellow Coats is all about what happens with him while he's on break. And the whole novella is Dark Tower. So those are my big three Tower connections. And I'm bringing in 4 other books for this recommendation. The first of which I'll mention is Salem's Lot. The reason for this is that Salem's Lot has a character that shows up in the Dark Tower series, and that's not the only thing going on with Salem's Lot in the series. It's absolutely inventive and imaginative and genius what Stephen King does with Salem's Lot in the Dark Tower series, so that's why I'm bringing it in to this recommendation. The next one I'm going to bring in here is The Stand. Now, the reason I'm bringing this one in is because of the fact that Randall Flagg is the primary protagonist in The Stand. He's a secondary antagonist in the Dark Tower series, and he's also in another book I'm bringing in here, The Eyes of the Dragon. So he gets around in the Stephen King universe, and he's not the only character, my friends, that this applies to in the Stephen King universe. Hey, what's up there, Ashley and Sprite? I love Insomnia as well. What I was saying with the characters is that there are characters in seemingly standalone Stephen King novels that show up in the Dark Tower series. Randall Flagg is one of those, and there's some other things going on with The Stand and the Dark Tower series, so I have to include it here in this list. The next one I'm bringing in, my friends, is The Eyes of the Dragon, for the reason that we get some gunslinger history here. In The Eyes of the Dragon, we get to understand Roland the Gunslinger's lineage. It's about the line of Eld, and it's definitely appropriate to bring in here. It's an Arthurian tale. It's a YA tale. Randall Flagg is the evil Merlin in this one. The final book that I'm bringing into this thing, my friends, is Everything's Eventual. This is a compilation of short stories, and one of them is a prelude to the Dark Tower series. It's all with Roland the Gunslinger before book 1, The Gunslinger, in the series. And there are a few other Dark Tower connections in this one as well. I want to ask you to like and subscribe here, my friends, as I move on here with the reading order for these books. I'm going to tell you why I recommend that you read these in this order, because I see a lot of recommendation lists for this, and they don't make sense to me. So I'm going to go through these now. In this series, I want to tell you up front, my friends, that you can read all of these other books that I've mentioned before you read the Dark Tower series. You'd be totally prepared at that point. Or you could save them until afterward if you just want to read the Tower books. But I recommend that you read them in this order so that everything comes together chronologically for you and you don't miss any of these important parts. Now, I would say that you can actually start with The Little Sisters of Illyria, which is the prelude in Everything's Eventual. You can go ahead and start with that one if you would like to do it that way. Not a problem. And you could also read The Stand up front, but I recommend starting with Little Sisters of Illyria if you have it. If not, that is fine. And then you're going to move on, my friends, to book 1, The Gunslinger. And we have 2 different versions of this. We have the original version and the revised version. The difference between the two books is that the revised edition has some problems. Stephen King, after this series became popular, went back to book one. He revised it. He merged a couple of characters because there were some sensical problems there. And he added 35 pages worth of material approximately to enrich the story, to make it connect to the other books more well. So I recommend reading the revised edition if it's your first trip through the tower. And if you want to read the not revised edition, the original, you might want to pull up an article or something that helps you to understand what was changed for the revised edition so that you don't get any misconceptions going on. After that, my friends, I recommend moving right on along to book two, The Drawing of the Three, my own personal favorite. I think it's the most imaginative book in this series, so move right on into book two. After that, my friends, I'm going to say move right on along into book three, The Wastelands. Now, this, my friends, is where you're going to want to read The Stand if you've been putting it off, because there are some things going on in book four, Wizard and Glass, that have to do with The Stand. So if you've put it off, read The Stand at this point, and then move along to Wizard and Glass, the fourth installment in this series. Now here, my friends, we actually have a bit of a conundrum. You see, Stephen King wrote an additional book for this series after it was finished, after book 7, and it's not really important for the storyline, so I'm going to recommend that you actually skip Wind Through the Keyhole, which is technically book 8, chronologically book 4.5, because it's just basically Roland telling some stories. It's not really integral to the plot of the Dark Tower series. So I recommend putting this one off, especially because book 4 is a lengthy paperback or hardback if you have it, and it's a backstory. And you might just want to be wanting to get on toward that tower. So I recommend putting the Wind Through the Keyhole off until afterward, but you could read it next if you want to do it that way. After you finish Wizard and Glass, my friends, you are going to want to read Low Men in Yellow Coats from the Hearts in Atlantis compilation because, oh no, my mistake, my friends. After book 4, after Wizard and Glass, you are going to want to move on with Salem's Lot. It's Salem's Lot you read after Wizard and Glass. And the reason for that is that coming up in book 5, Wolves of the Kala, there are going to be a lot of things going on with Salem's Lot. Okay, it's one of the best parts of the series. It really is a testament to the imagination of Stephen King. So read Salem's Lot, and then, my friends, we'll be moving right along with Wolves of the Kala, the 5th installment in this series. At this point, my friends, you are going to actually just move right along into Song of Susanna. We're going to go right into book 6 from book 5. And this is where I'm going to throw some books on the pile here for you, my friends. After you finish Song of Susanna, you're going to want to read Black House if you haven't already, Insomnia if you haven't already, and Low Men in Yellow Coats if you haven't already. The reason for that is that Low Men in Yellow Coats has Ted Brautigan in it, and Ted Brautigan has to do with book 6. So after you finish book 6, you're going to want to get the rest of Ted Brautigan's tale. So go right into Low Men in Yellow Coats. Now, you could save it for after the series if you want to. But keep in mind, I'm recommending it this way for the chronology of everything so that you don't miss anything. And you're going to want to read Insomnia before you read book 7 in the Dark Tower series because it's integral. You see, Insomnia is about the Crimson King and the god in the Dark Tower series, referred to as Gan. And they're playing humans as pawns, basically, fighting for that tower. And there's a young man named Patrick caught up in this, and his story is in Insomnia, and he comes into play in the Dark Tower series. Read Insomnia before book 7. The other one is Black House, and the reason I recommend that is because you're going to want to get that in before you finish the final book, just to have the extra added information in that book before the conclusion of the series. So read those 3, and then, my friends, move right on along to the final over 1,000. It's a 1,050 page paperback. What's up there, guys? I see your comments here. In this book, you are going to be finishing the series up. You'll finally get a conclusion. And afterward, I recommend reading The Eyes of the Dragon for some history, for a treat after the series. And then, my friends, you're going to want to read Everything's Eventual. If you started with The Little Sisters of Illyria, time to come back to finish the other stories. And if you haven't read any of them, then you're going to want to read this one next to get all of the eggs that are in this concerning the Dark Tower series. Now, I myself didn't even know about The Little Sisters of Illyria, so I had a smile on my face the whole time after I had finished the series, and I found this piece of the tower in this book. So yeah, you're going to want to read this one as well. Now, I'm bringing in 2 extra books here that are Dark Tower related. Well, one of them is. You see, there are other books, my friends, besides the ones that I have listed here. How good would you say this is compared to other Stephen King titles? Theo, I see your comment there. I would say that this is the best thing that Stephen King has ever done. It is literally his magnum opus because of how lengthy it is. It's an epic with scope and depth, and it's just amazing. And there are other books that play in. So this is Stephen King's greatest work, the Dark Tower series itself. And the only other thing you could even consider saying that for, I think, well, maybe it, but The Stand is a big favorite for constant readers. But The Stand is incorporated in the Dark Tower multiverse. And in some ways, even it is. So this is his greatest piece. OS United, would anyone recommend Dr. Sleep? I wasn't the biggest fan of Dr. Sleep. But, my friends, let me bring these other 2 books in that I want to show you here. Alrighty. We have From a Buick-8 that did not make my readers list. And the reason for that is because it's just not super duper important for the series itself. But check this. In this book, there is a car that shows up in 1950s America, and it's a very evil and unusual car. And it turns out that the car is from the multiverse of the Dark Tower series. And you can see how that's a tower connection. It's a really great tower connection, but it's not really super duper important for the tower plot like some of the other books that I brought into this, and that's why it didn't make it in. So you can see another example of the Dark Tower series making it into other Stephen King novels that I haven't even mentioned here or hadn't mentioned here. There are many others like this. Finally, my friends, I have a book here called The Man in Black. You see, you tower junkies are going to love this. The Dark Tower series opens up. The man in black fled across the desert, and the gunslinger followed. Well, my friends, the man in black is Randall Flagg, and this is a Western novel called The Man in Black. Now, you can see I put 19 on the screen. Look at the price I paid for this book. Can you see that? 19 cents. Now, could it be a coincidence, my friends? I thought not, and I questioned the book, the man that owned the bookstore that I got this book in, and he didn't seem to be very wise about Stephen King. So it truly is a mystery, but this was a great find for me with that 19 cents price tag on it. Now, I love this series of books, my friend. I recommended to you the other pieces that I think you should read. Let me know in the comments if you've read some of these books, if you're thinking about reading them. I actually have a Dark Tower tattoo. This is the Eye of the Crimson King. So you can see how this series of books has affected me. It's a part of my life. Here's my shirt. Let me get that off the screen here. Here's my shirt. It's the Gunslinger. So you can see that I absolutely love this. It's become a part of my life, basically. I've got the shirt. I'm repping it twice with the tattoo. And I've thought about it every day since I read it because it's just such a part now of my consciousness and of who I am. It's had that powerful of an impact on me, and it's made me want to read some other epic fantasy series. I'm actually going to be trying some other ones out. OS United, would you recommend reading The Stand and then going on to the Dark Tower series? You could do that. Or if you didn't see what I was saying earlier, you're going to want to read The Stand before you read Wizard and Glass. So yes, you could read The Stand as prerequisitory work for the Tower series, but it's a long book. And if your objective is to just read the Tower series, that's up to you. If you really want to get the most out of it, you could read it up front or stop after book 3 and read The Stand before moving on to book 4, because that is where the connections are most prevalent. Just started reading Pet Sematary, and I'm thoroughly enjoying this far. We'll definitely check this out when I'm done. Theo, I actually have not read Pet Sematary. Now, I saw the movie when I was younger, but I'm going to read it, and I know it's hot right now because I think there was a new movie. I'm not really big on movies myself. I watch about like one a year, maybe. I watched The Joker earlier this year, and I thought it was fantastic. But I need to start watching some more Stephen King movies. But in reference to Pet Sematary, I am intending on reading it and reviewing it here on my channel before the end of the year. So there you go, guys. I love this series. It's a part of my life. I've read the first book, The Gunslinger, 3 times. And the next time I'm going to read the not revised original version because I don't think I have yet. And I've read the second installment, The Drawing of the 3 times. And the rest of them, I've read them once. So I'm getting ready to go into book 3 for the second time and get back to that tower for the second time and read some other epic fantasy series as well. I'm really looking forward to covering epic fantasy here on my channel. Getting ready to do a video here in the next day or two concerning getting into epic fantasy. I've only completed the Dark Tower series, and I've read some other books. This year I read the first 2 Jim Butcher Dresden Files series books, and I read A Game of Thrones. I read Gardens of the Moon. I just want to actually complete another epic fantasy series, and I'm looking forward to The Wheel of Time. I am going to be reading book 1 of that in a group here in the near future. Check me out on Facebook. If you are on there, come to Avid Readers Roundtable Discussion Group. I'll drop the link in the description for that. And check out my page, Reading Funk. Because in our group, Avid Readers, we do group read-alongs. I have groups where we meet by video chat. I just have all kinds of group reading projects going on in that Avid Readers Roundtable Discussion Group on Facebook. OS United. Oh, Joyland, Michael Stevens. Hey there, Blaine, I see you. Michael Stevens, Joyland is an outstanding, whoops, I lost that there. Okay, yeah, and quick read. I have Joyland, I own it. I also own the Colorado Kid, which both of those, just a moment here. Got it? These are part of the hard case files, crime books. And I have Joyland and I have the Colorado Kid. Haven't read either one of these, but I intend to in the very near future because I have read probably like 42 or 43 Stephen King books. And that's not including the ones I started and gave up on, which I'm going back through. I actually gave up on Black House like 3 times, and I finally went back and started from the beginning and finished it this year. One of the Tower books that I recommended. Would you do Game of Thrones reread? Blaine here. Let me read the one before that here. OS United. I have just started to read it, and next I'm going to move on to the Dark Tower series. The only other Stephen King book I have read is The Shining. Would you recommend I read other book before Dark Tower? The only books I would recommend that you read with the Dark Tower are the ones I've mentioned here in this review. And of course, you can just not read those right now. If you want to read the Dark Tower series and you're really gung-ho, you can read the other books that I've mentioned here. But if you just want to check the series out, just go ahead and get The Gunslinger and read it. See if you like it. There is a substantial increase in the quality of writing and the imagination and maturity of Stephen King between book 1 and book 2. So you might not want to fully judge the series if you're thinking about giving up on it before you try that second book. And don't let the movie prevent you from reading this series because the plot is completely different. In some movies, the writers will change it. The movie writers, they'll change it a bit. Basically the same. Some things are left out, some things are added, but it's basically the same, right? The Dark Tower series actually has the plot changed. It's very loosely based on the Dark Tower series, and it's like nothing to do with it for the most part. So don't let that prevent you from reading the books. It's not even similar. Well, don't let the movie ruin it for you. Okay, would I do a Game of Thrones reread? I absolutely would do a Game of Thrones reread. You know, I'm thinking about reviewing it, the first book, because I reviewed the first one here on my channel. But I don't want to do that until I read A Clash of Kings, because it's been like going on 3 years now since I read a Game of Thrones. And I want to either reread it and review it, or read A Clash of Kings and then review it so that I am back fresh with George R.R. Martin and his style of writing and everything before I do the review. But yeah, I would reread a Game of Thrones, and maybe I will before going into book 2. Maybe I could do like a back-to-back Game of Thrones again, Clash of Kings. Okay. Yes, I hope you do a video on getting into fantasy. I have had nothing but trouble trying to get into fantasy. It seems so inaccessible to me. Ashley and Sprite. Now, I feel you on that one. One of my problems with epic fantasy, and I'll cover this here this week, is that a lot of times I'll think book 1 is okay because I'm not the biggest fan in the whole world of high-end epic fantasy because I like suspense in the plot, and sometimes I find fantasy can be lacking in that a little bit. But I'll read book 1, like with the Game of Thrones, and I thought it was good. But to go further, I'll start to run out of gas with the same characters. And you know what I mean? So one thing I like about the Dark Tower is it's not that high-end fantasy thing, but I like some high-end fantasy, and I've got to actually commit to a series. So I feel you there when it comes to reading fantasy and not being engrossed and not being thrilled. So I don't know, but I feel you on that one. How many books have you read and have in your bookshelves? I have read hundreds of books, not thousands. I might have read or 500 books in my life, probably on my bookshelves back there. My bookshelves are actually incomplete right now. I have some things I'm working on. My bookshelves are going to look a lot better in the near future, but I own probably about 200 or 300 books. Yes, I have The Way of Kings, OS United, a highly rated epic fantasy series. The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. So I bought it because I want to read it. It's a longie. Woo! It's a longie. That's got to be over 1,000 pages. It's like it's in between 12 and 1,300. I'm thinking maybe audiobook. Not sure yet, but definitely going to do it. One of my problems is though, like I already have epic fantasy series started. What am I going to do? Am I going to start a million of them and never finish them? But maybe I'll do The Way of Kings instead of The Wheel of Time. But I don't know. I really want to read The Wheel of Time. And I know that Brandon Sanderson contributed in a huge way in finishing that series. So, yeah, I'm thinking about reading The Way of Kings. Set that there. I have not read the Dune series, Christina. And I'll tell you what, I've been talking about it all this year. I've got it marked on Goodreads. I have other people that have said they would do a group read with me on that. So yeah, I do want to read Dune, but I've got to think about this epic fantasy thing. I'm going to do a video here in the next couple of days about getting into epic fantasy, and I'm going to talk about which series I should commit to. I need to actually structure and plan. What am I going to do with this epic fantasy thing? So I've got to put some thought into that and do a video. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up now, my friends. I want to thank you all for stopping by. I love this series. I highly recommend it. Stephen King has done something that no other author has done, or at least not to the extent that Stephen King has done it. And that is, he has written an epic fantasy series that many other books play a huge part of. Some in a minor way, but some of the books in a huge way, like the ones I mentioned here today. So it's just absolutely amazing and fantastic. And I thank you all for stopping by, my friends, and I will see you next time.